They scanned our primitive metal hulls and laughed. Then we activated the metamaterials. Captain Ronan Krynn's fingers drummed against the command console as the proximity alarm screamed through the bridge of the Defiant. The Krevok Consortium's fleet hung in space like a constellation of death, 17 vessels, each one bristling with energy cannons that could vaporize a moon. "Sir, they're scanning us," Lieutenant Chen reported, her voice tight with controlled fear. "Full spectrum analysis." Ronan's weathered face remained impassive. Let them look. Let them see exactly what they expected to see. The main viewscreen flickered as an alien face materialized, chitinous plates covering a skull that seemed designed for ramming, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, mandibles clicking with what might have been amusement. The universal translator rendered the creature's words in flat, mechanical tones. "Human vessel. I am War Commander Zethak of the Krevok Consortium. Your pathetic craft will surrender immediately, or we will demonstrate why your species should have remained in their primitive solar system." Ronan stood slowly, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow across the bridge. "War Commander, I'm Captain Ronan Krynn of the Terran Defense Fleet. You're in violation of the neutral zone accords." Zethak's mandibles spread wider. "Your hull composition reads as basic iron-nickel alloy with traces of aluminum. Your weapon's signatures are primitive plasma discharge. We have conquered 17 star systems, Captain. Your species builds toys." The transmission cut. "All hands battle stations," Ronan commanded. "Signal the fleet execute Phantom Protocol." The bridge erupted into controlled chaos. Officers slammed their hands across control panels, activating systems that had been dormant since leaving Earth's orbital shipyards. Throughout the ship, metamaterial layers began their deadly dance, exotic matter arrangements that could bend electromagnetic radiation like putty, disguised beneath hulls that appeared to be nothing more than refined asteroid ore. "Krevok fleet is moving to attack formation," Tactical Officer Morrison announced. 17 vessels, 3 dreadnoughts, 8 cruisers, 6 destroyers. "And they think they're facing one human ship," Ronan murmured. "Helm, bring us about. Make it look like we're trying to run." The Defiant banked hard to starboard, engines flaring with apparent desperation. Behind them, the Krevok fleet surged forward like predators scenting wounded prey. Zethak's voice crackled over the comm again. "Running already, human. Your cowardice matches your primitive technology." Ronan smiled. "Chen, are you getting good readings on their weapon signatures?" "Crystal clear, sir. Their plasma cannons are operating at 2.3 terawatts per discharge. Energy shields are maintaining a standard deflection matrix." "Good, Morrison, target their lead dreadnought. Full spread antimatter torpedoes." "Sir, at this range." "Fire." 6 torpedoes streaked from the Defiant's launch tubes, their contrails painting lines of light across the void. The Krevok dreadnought's shields flared as the weapons struck and held. Zethak's laughter echoed through the bridge. "Is that the best your species can manage? Observe true power." The dreadnought's main cannon swiveled toward the Defiant. Energy built along its length like captured lightning, then discharged in a beam that could have carved continents. The beam struck the Defiant dead center and vanished. For a moment, space itself seemed to hold its breath. The Krevok fleet continued its advance, but something had changed in their formation, a hesitation, a confusion that rippled through their ranks like a stone dropped in still water. "Impossible," Zethak snarled. "Our sensors show direct impact. Your vessel should be debris." Ronan's smile widened. "Funny thing about sensors, War Commander, they only tell you what you're looking for." He turned to his communications officer. "Signal the Phantom and Wraith. Time to introduce ourselves." Space twisted. 2 more human vessels materialized from what had appeared to be empty void, their metamaterial cloaking systems disengaging in cascades of bent light. They had been there all along, hidden in the asteroid field that the Krevok had dismissed as navigational hazards. The Phantom opened fire first. Its forward batteries unleashed a barrage that tore through the Krevok destroyer's shields like tissue paper. The alien vessel's hull cracked open, atmosphere venting in crystalline streams as its crew died in the vacuum. The Wraith targeted a cruiser, its weapon systems calibrated to exploit the exact weaknesses Chen had identified in the Krevok shield matrix. The cruiser's port side erupted in a chain of explosions that traveled the length of the ship like a fuse burning toward detonation. Impossible, Zethek's voice had lost its mocking tone. 3 ships cannot. Chen, full spectrum jamming, Ronan ordered. I'm tired of listening to him. The Krevok fleet tried to regroup, but their formation had been shattered by the sudden appearance of 2 additional human vessels. Worse, their targeting systems were struggling to maintain locks on ships that seemed to phase in and out of existence as their metamaterial hulls bent sensor beams around them. A Krevok cruiser fired at the Defiant, its plasma cannon discharged bright enough to blind unprotected eyes. The beam struck the human ship's hull and scattered like light hitting a prism, deflecting harmlessly into space. Morrison, return fire. Target their reactor core. Aye, sir. The Defiant's main gun spoke once. The cruiser's reactor containment failed, and the ship became a brief star before collapsing into twisted metal. But the Krevok weren't finished. Zethek's dreadnought and its 2 companions began a coordinated assault, their combined firepower focused on overwhelming the human ship's defenses through sheer volume. Shields at 60%. Morrison reported as the Defiant shuddered under the barrage. Hull integrity holding, but the metamaterial matrix is reaching saturation. Ronan's jaw tightened. The exotic matter that made their hulls nearly invulnerable had limits. Too much energy absorption, and the molecular structure would collapse, leaving them as vulnerable as the Krevok believed them to be. Signal the Phantom and Wraith. Attack pattern Delta. We're going to ram this down their throats. The 3 human ships accelerated toward the Krevok dreadnoughts, their engines pushing them to velocities that would have been suicide for vessels with conventional hulls. But metamaterials didn't just bend light and energy. They could redistribute kinetic force, turning a ship into a weapon that could survive its own impact. The Krevok fleet tried to adjust, but their formation was too rigid, their tactics too dependent on overwhelming firepower. They had conquered 17 star systems by bringing superior numbers and technology to bear against primitive opponents. They had never faced an enemy that could turn their own advantages against them. The Phantom struck the first dreadnought amidships, its reinforced prow punching through the alien vessel's hull like a spear through armor. The impact should have destroyed both ships, but the human vessel's metamaterial structure absorbed and redirected the collision force, allowing it to tear through the dreadnought's interior before emerging from the other side. The dreadnought broke apart in a cascade of secondary explosions. The Wraith engaged the second dreadnought in a deadly dance, its weapon systems targeting the alien ship's engine nacelles. Plasma beams lanced back and forth between the vessels, but the human ship's hull continued to deflect the worst of the damage while its own weapons found their marks with surgical precision. Ronan focused on Zethek's flagship, the largest and most heavily armed of the Krevok vessels. The war commander had finally grasped the true nature of his situation. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by 3 ships he had dismissed as primitive toys. Human, Zethek's voice crackled through the static of the jamming field. What sorcery is this? Your vessels should be scrap metal. No sorcery, Ronan replied, his voice calm despite the chaos erupting around them. Just human ingenuity. We've been watching your expansion for months, War Commander, learning your tactics, studying your technology. Did you really think we'd meet you in open battle without an advantage? The Defiant rolled to avoid a spread of torpedoes, its hull gleaming as the metamaterial surface rippled like liquid mercury. The weapons passed harmlessly through space where the ship had been a moment before. "Your turn," Ronan said. The Defiant's torpedo tubes opened, revealing not the conventional antimatter warheads the Krevok expected, but something far more exotic. The weapons that emerged were barely larger than shuttlecraft, their hulls composed of the same metamaterials that protected the human ships. They struck Zethak's dreadnought and burrowed into its hull like parasites, their exotic matter shells allowing them to phase through the ship's armor as if it were mist. Once inside, they detonated with the force of miniature stars. The dreadnought's death was spectacular. Its hull cracked open like an egg, revealing the intricate machinery within before the entire structure collapsed in on itself. Zethak's final transmission was a scream of rage and disbelief that cut off abruptly as his ship's reactor core breached. The remaining Krevok vessels tried to flee, but the human ships were faster, their metamaterial hulls allowing them to push their engines beyond normal safety limits. One by one, the alien ships were hunted down and destroyed, their crews never understanding how 3 primitive vessels had annihilated a fleet that had conquered star systems. When the last Krevok ship died in a burst of plasma fire, space fell silent except for the hum of the human ship's engines. "Damage report," Ronan ordered. "Minimal casualties across the fleet," Morrison replied. "The Phantom took some hull damage but nothing critical. The Wraith is reporting full operational status." "And the metamaterial systems?" "Operating within normal parameters. The exotic matter matrices are already beginning to regenerate." Ronan nodded, settling back into his command chair. Around him, the bridge crew began the process of securing from battle stations, their movements efficient and professional despite the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. "Sir," Chen said quietly, "long-range sensors are detecting additional Krevok forces moving toward this sector. Looks like a full battle group, at least 40 ships." "Let them come," Ronan replied. "Signal Earth Command. Tell them the field test was a complete success. The Krevok Consortium is about to learn what happens when you underestimate humanity." He stood and walked to the main viewscreen, where the debris of the alien fleet drifted in slowly expanding clouds. Each piece of wreckage represented a lesson the Krevok had learned too late, that appearances could be deceiving, that primitive didn't mean helpless, and that humanity's greatest weapon had always been its ability to adapt and overcome. The metamaterial technology that protected their ships was just the beginning. Hidden in asteroid fields throughout the sector, automated factories were already producing more exotic matter, more advanced weapons, more ships that could appear to be one thing while being something else entirely. The Krevok had made a fundamental error in their assessment of human capabilities. They had looked at the surface and assumed they understood the depths beneath. They had seen iron and aluminum and dismissed the possibility that those familiar elements might be arranged in ways that defied conventional physics. "Helm, set course for the Kepler station," Ronan ordered. "We have a war to win." The Defiant turned toward the distant stars, its hull shimmering with barely contained energies. Behind it, the Phantom and Wraith fell into formation, 3 ships that had just rewritten the rules of interstellar warfare. In the depths of space, automated beacons began transmitting the news of the Krevok fleet's destruction to every human outpost in the sector. The message was simple and direct. The aliens had underestimated humanity's capacity for innovation, and they had paid the ultimate price for their arrogance. But Ronan knew this was only the beginning. The Krevok Consortium controlled hundreds of worlds, commanded thousands of ships, and had never faced a defeat of this magnitude. They would respond with overwhelming force, bringing everything they had to bear against the upstart humans who had dared to challenge their supremacy. Let them come. Humanity had spent centuries learning to fight against superior odds, to find advantages where none seemed to exist, to turn weakness into strength through cunning and determination. The metamaterial technology was just the latest example of human ingenuity applied to the ancient art of warfare. The stars ahead held promise and peril in equal measure. The Krevok would not make the same mistake twice. They would come prepared for advanced human technology, ready to counter the advantages that had given 3 ships victory over 17. But they would still be thinking in terms of conventional warfare, still assuming that superior numbers and firepower would eventually prevail. They would not understand until it was too late that humanity's true strength lay not in any single technology, but in their ability to adapt, to innovate, to find new ways to turn their enemies' advantages against them. The war that was coming would test every human colony, every ship, every man and woman who had chosen to stand against the alien tide. But it would also prove something that the Krevok Consortium had never encountered in their conquest of 17 star systems, that some species could not be conquered, could not be broken, could not be made to surrender no matter how hopeless the odds appeared. Humanity had always been at its best when facing extinction. The Krevok were about to learn why. As the 3 human ships disappeared into the void, their metamaterial hulls bending light around them until they became invisible against the star field, automated systems throughout the sector began implementing protocols that had been prepared for this moment. Hidden bases powered up their defenses, cloaked ships began moving to intercept positions, and the vast machinery of human warfare began its deadly dance. The Krevok Consortium had made their choice when they entered human space with weapons powered and shields raised. Now they would learn the cost of that decision, one destroyed fleet at a time, until their empire crumbled and their species understood the fundamental truth that had driven humanity to the stars. Never underestimate the species that had clawed its way up from a single world to challenge the galaxy itself. The war had begun. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more journeys. Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for the next adventure.